like it's the first time I've done Zoom. Our hosts and supers, we're so excited. I just received word that we have a sold out crowd Friday and Saturday. Over 3,700 tickets have been sold. So extremely excited about the atmosphere. Weather's going to look awesome. The team is prepared. I mean, there isn't anything that anybody can do at this point that we haven't been prepared for all season long. And, our conference prepared us for this moment, and just the regionals itself. We know it was a grind. It was a really, really tough battle that we went through. And I'm just so unbelievably proud of the adversity that this team faced and didn't falter, and just extremely determined, and probably one of the best performances I've ever been a part of as a coach. People after the fact told me that we had like a 3.5% chance of winning that regional, that it's never been done. Only 11 teams have won after they lost on Friday. And that just shows you the resiliency and the determination that this team has, and the pure guts. We needed a break after regionals. We were extremely tired and extremely dehydrated, probably unhealthy how dehydrated we were. They had Monday, and Tuesday was an extremely light day with a lot of recovery. Yesterday was getting our legs back underneath us, and today we're going to have another workout to be able to get our body moving again. But we're ready to go. I mean, at this point, you're fighting for every opportunity and fighting for every pitch.
Larissa, what did you learn about Lauren last weekend? I mean, I know she was your number one pitcher, but did you know she had that in her? And does it change how maybe you approach your pitching staff going into this weekend?
I'd want to say I think they all have it in them, because they're extremely competitive individuals. And when sometimes you're faced with that adversity, it brings out the best in you. So I've seen it. I saw it early on in the year against Clemson. Very similar. I've never seen it at this level, to be able to throw 4 games in 2 days at the level that she did, and the conditions that she did. She just willed herself and gutted herself. And, she and I talked yesterday, and also talked a lot Monday and Tuesday about how she was feeling and her experiences. And she just said the adrenaline got her through it. Like, she was fighting every single pitch for her team. But really remarkable that the body of work, like, for anybody to be able to withstand and do what she did, was extremely impressive. But I mean, her whole entire career, she's wanted it. She's wanted this opportunity. She's always wanted to be the number one, always, since she stepped foot on campus. And then she was just surrounded with people that, like Jordan Weber in particular, had a real hard time throwing back-to-back days. So Jordan was in a much better position to throw Friday, Sunday. But Krings has always had that mentality where she's wanted the ball.
Go for it, Brandon.
Larissa, can you kind of speak on how you've seen kind of Lauren progress this week, kind of following that performance? Also Julia too, because obviously catching in that heat for those 5 games obviously is a tough task. But how have you kind of seen them rebound from kind of that performance?
Yeah, and their seriousness of purpose is there. Like, Krings knows what she did. She knows how her body felt, and she understands that she has to really pay attention to get her body recovered. And that's kind of a difference that I've seen. Like, early on in the year, you had a lot more downtime. You could maybe neglect your body a little bit more because it wasn't the same level of intensity. Like, she knows we win or we go home. So she spent a lot of time in the training room, working with our trainer, working with our strength coach. Even yesterday during practice, she had a nice, easy bullpen, and then spent probably the next hour working with her strength coach on some mobility stuff to work out some of that lactic acid. So just the seriousness of purpose. Like, she's a professional athlete. Like, that's how she's training her body. And Crenshaw, it was funny because Tuesday at practice, I said, "How do you feel?" And she's like, "I felt like I got hit by a Mack truck." Like, she was sore all over the place, her hips, her legs. She said her left tricep, because she had to frame so many pitches, was on fire. So she had to really work that out. But I mean, you could just see the exhaustion. And I'm going to talk in particular about Crenshaw. She came up to me before that 9th inning of the last game, and she said, "We need you to rally us. Like, they could feel that they were just starting to fatigue out. And it was just getting harder and harder every single inning. And she came to me and said, we need you to bring the team in. We need you to get in our face. You need to rally us because we need a little bit extra right now. So for her to recognize that she was fighting every single ounce of energy that she had, to be able to put the team ahead of everything, to realize what the team needs, just shows you the leadership that we have and the awareness that everybody was feeling the same thing.
I know any team you play is going to be good at this time of year, obviously. But I feel like a lot of people were surprised to see Duke having won the regular season and a tournament in a major conference seated where they were. Were you surprised when the bracket came out that they weren't going to be hosting this weekend?
Honestly, Gabe, nothing surprises me at all with the NCAA. I mean, you don't know what they're thinking. You don't know what they're going to be evaluating every single year. I've seen some teams that have been, I mean, we were 13 RPI one year and we were a top 8 seed hosting. So I don't try to ever speculate. You look at their entire body of work and I mean, they have 50 wins and they're very successful. They're in the tournament. I don't know how much more you can really dig into it. I mean, people talk about their strength of schedule, but you don't win 50 games just by a fluke. And yeah, they're extremely successful team and in a really, really tough conference. And I know that they're going to come in here and they're going to be highly competitive. I think what's really tough, like even looking at where we were going into the SEC tournament, and we were hovering at 9 RPI for a long time. And I didn't project that we would be able to get any higher because the teams ahead of us were so successful. We made a great run during the SEC tournament. We got as high as 5 at one point, but it's really hard to build yourself up when the teams ahead of you are also winning. So I don't know when you look at Duke, if there's other factors going into play rather than just winning percentage in terms of away from home and strength of schedule, things that came into play there.
Larissa, obviously last week you had to prepare for 3 teams. Now you have to prepare for one. How does that kind of feel? But also when looking at this Duke lineup, what are you kind of knowing that the pitchers are going to have to do to attack this lineup?
From a scouting standpoint, it's a lot easier to prepare for one than it is for 3. We can dig into them a little bit more and have way more in-depth conversations about individual players and look at a lot of their tendencies a lot deeper. So that's been easier on our staff and it's easier to have those conversations to prepare for a few days before you start to play them. Duke has a really extremely impressive numbers. They have a lot of power at the top of the lineup. I think Claire Davison is one of the best hitters in the country. So she's one of those that we've circled that we've said, don't let her beat you. So we're going to have to be extremely careful with her and keep her off balance. And that's going to be really important. But I mean, I have complete faith in our pitching staff and we've faced potent lineups before. I mean, that's pretty much our conference. But the biggest thing is how we're going to be able to score runs because they have 2 really strong pitchers that are tough. And we have to be able to, one, swing at good pitches. And if we start expanding and chasing balls out of the zone, we're not going to be very successful. So that's going to be the real key is controlling our offense and being able to manufacture some runs and having some quality at bats early on. I think one thing that really stands out with Duke is they score a lot of the runs late. And I think that works well for our pitching staff because other than this weekend, we don't really rely on one arm to go the complete game. Like we have multiple arms that we can be able to, and we've been doing that all year long. So just bringing that to everyone's attention that we're not afraid to make changes because they do score so many runs late.
Coach, during regionals, how much do you think it paid off for your pitching staff being as fresh as they were throughout the season, innings wise, and how much of advantage do you feel that is heading into super regionals?
I think it was a huge advantage from the start of the SEC tournament going forward. Because our pitchers were extremely healthy and fresh. They have not been overused all year long. And I've made reference to that a lot. Like Krings had 111 or 117 going into postseason, and a lot of our opponents were about 175, 180. That's a huge difference in workload. And I think that really shows that Krings was able to do what she was able to do because she wasn't overworked and she wasn't fatiguing out towards the end of the year. You know, even you look at McCann and even Harrison's right around 100. And McCann's well below 100. I mean, they're extremely fresh. And when we have bullpens, they get stronger the more consecutive days they throw because of how fresh they are.
You told us last week how important it was to win game one and avoid, putting your backs against the wall and all that. This team has really seemed to almost play its best when their backs are against the wall. But going into this weekend, I mean, is that mentality still the same? Like, hey, even though you've seen them do it, you'd much rather see them try to play from ahead.
Yeah, no, and I would not prefer to have our backs up against the wall. It's a tough feeling, and you're living and dying on every single pitch could make or break your season. I would much rather go out and win game one. But again, like the resiliency, it's okay if we don't. It's okay if we fail because we rebound extremely well. And that was really it was really special is after we lost Friday, game one in regionals, the response from my community, and I'm saying like Coach Drinkowitz and Coach Smith and a lot of my fellow colleagues in our sport, they're like, you guys have always rebounded after a loss. Like you guys get on a roll, like you're going to be okay. And for people to be able to realize that and recognize it and kind of like reassure us that we are a very resilient team, even though our team already knows it, is helpful.
Coach, one player who's been able to make an impact for you as of late that I feel has kind of gone under the radar is Claire Cahalan, now in that starting role full-time in left field. What kind of inspired you to make that decision, and how do you think that's paid off as we look at the SEC tournament and then now regionals?
I mean, we're getting a lot of offensive production out of that spot. We tried multiple people with Shantice Phillips and Maya Dodge, and Claire has been extremely impressive. I think what gets unnoticed a lot is her range and her ability to run down some balls. I mean, there's been some balls that have been hit that her reads off the bat are extremely impressive, and she's in perfect position to make those plays, and she's making a lot of really difficult plays look easy. Even though there was a low line drive that she had this past weekend that she laid out for, and could have made the catch and would have been an unbelievable play, but kept the ball in front of her. So it's just that gutsiness and that willing to be able to sacrifice yourself for the team. But she adds a little bit different repertoire to our lineup. Being at the bottom and a slapper and getting herself on base, that helps. It takes the pressure off of Langer, where she was at the bottom of the lineup, and then also sets it up for the top of our lineup, and just has been really effective.
Larissa, you mentioned obviously taking maybe some words of advice or just things like that from Coach Drinkwich, Coach Smith. Just what is it kind of like having a group of coaches that are so tightly knit like you guys? Just kind of being able to kind of turn to that. And what advice maybe have you taken from other coaches, maybe on at Missouri or maybe other places that have kind of been able to help you apply here in playoffs?
You know, the biggest thing is when you're a coach, sometimes it's the loneliest place in the world. And you're always under a microscope. You're always picked apart regardless of what you do. I mean, how many people did I have thrown out at home plate this past weekend? And when you have coaches that understand what that feeling is like, it gives you a support system that you can talk to someone, or they can just give you a little bit of advice or encouragement to help realize that you aren't alone. And that's what Coach Smith and Coach Drinkowitz have really provided to me all year long, and wins and losses. And, you know, everybody's going to want to jump on your bus when you're winning, but they've always been there when we haven't been. And they're extremely supportive. But when they're just as excited about our success as you are about your own program, it's extremely special that, you know, it's a full team. Like here at Mizzou, it's about the full team. It's about our athletic department supporting one another. Because it's not one program. One program's not better than anybody else. We're all in this together, and it brings recognition and notoriety to the entire university when we're competing at this national stage. And I think it also, at the same time, it helps all the other programs to realize that it can be done by everybody. that if you get the right people in the locker room and in your staff and in the room, that every program here at Mizzou can be highly, highly successful. I don't know what your other question was, Brandon. I'm sorry.
No, you're pretty good. I was just asking pretty much what advice, but you kind of answered it, so thank you.
Yeah.
Coach Anderson, it's easy to not think about looking forward, but obviously the stakes are high this weekend. And I think what would it mean to you and your team to have the opportunity to head to Oklahoma City to be in the Women's College World Series for the first time in over a decade? That's what you're playing for this week.
Yeah, and it's every girl's dream. I mean, every softball player from the time they pick up a ball is everyone's dream to play in the College World Series. And you ask anybody what their goal is, and it's to go. And here we have an opportunity to make that dream come true, but we can't focus on that. Like, we have to focus on one pitch at a time, one inning at a time, because we know what's at stake. You know, you're playing in an SEC championship, you know what's at stake. You want to hold up that trophy. We're playing for a regional right now. We know what's at stake. And Duke has been to the Super Regionals 3 years in a row. They know what's at stake. I mean, they have that feeling. Every senior on that team has had that feeling of not going. So only our seniors have that feeling of when they were freshmen of not winning the Super Regional to go to the College World Series. So it's one of those things that we can't talk about. We can't emphasize. We can't dwell on the fact that we win this, we're going to the World Series. We have to win every single pitch and every single inning to have a chance to be successful.
Coach, recently Bleacher Report called Duke the best team not to be hosting a regional this weekend. The NCAA softball recently re-ranked Duke ahead of Missouri in their most recent power rankings of sort. What are your kind of thoughts to being viewed as some sort of underdog despite hosting the regional this week?
I think we've been an underdog all year long. I mean, polls don't dictate results, and polls are just sometimes popularity contests, and maybe Duke's more popular. I mean, honestly, I really don't care, and the game doesn't care. And when the pitch is thrown, the pitch isn't saying, well, Duke is ranked this and Mizzou's ranked this, so I'm going to do something different. Like, we got to compete and we got to fight. And at the end of the day, whoever's going to have more opportunities and who's going to win more pitches is going to be the more successful team. But the polls don't care. We don't care. We've been the underdog all year long. That's fine.
If you look at the way your team played in the SEC title game against Florida, and then the next time they had a do or die day, the way they played, what do you think you guys learned between those two experiences, or is it as simple as you just played better one day?
I felt like, well, the SEC tournament, that championship game, 4th day in a row. I think that played a big part. And I do think we were a little tight. Like, I do think, and the team doesn't feel like they were tight, but I do think we were a little tight and we weren't playing free. And we play our best when we have fun. So I need to make sure that I control my emotions and I let them have fun. That if I'm uptight, they're going to read me. So I'm joking around a lot more. I'm doing stupid little games in the dugout a lot more to keep them loose and to keep them relaxed. So they don't feel the pressure of what's at stake. And that's really important. And like I said, at the end of one of the regional games, and I think it was on Sunday, regardless of what the result was, I was so extremely proud of the team. I was so proud of how they performed and how they competed. And the result just adds to it. But they give everything they have all the time. And regardless of what's going to happen at the end of this weekend, I'm proud of them either way. Like, no one picked us to be here. Where were we picked in the preseason, the SEC? Like 10th or 11th? And no one figured out that we would be able to be this successful other than ourselves. And that's really all that matters.
Coach, what do the conversations kind of look like between the seniors who have been there before with the rest of the team who hasn't had the opportunity to participate in a super regional?
You know, they started early on, and I don't think that the conversations are going on anymore because it was more about the atmosphere. And we've had that atmosphere all year long, from regular season games against Florida and LSU to hosting regionals to now hosting supers. Like, the atmosphere has been electric, and that was probably the most profound statement and experiences that our seniors passed on. And you have to remember too, when our seniors were freshmen and we hosted in 21, it was right after COVID. So it was the stadium opened up to 100% capacity. So it was the first time ever that they played in a packed stadium. So those were the memories that they remember the most about how loud it was, because they've never ever played in an environment that electric ever. But again, when you're having 3,700 at home games in the regular season, then it becomes almost second nature and expected. And I think that's where we have an advantage against Duke. I don't think they've played in an atmosphere. Their last 3 super regionals have all been at home, and their stadium does not come close to the capacity that ours does.
Larissa, on that note, how much of an impact did it make last week? Just having that fan base there, especially in the elimination games.
It plays a huge role. I mean, there were a number of times, and I know how hot we were, and I know how hot our fans must have been, but there were times that I'm trying to get the crowd going because we needed them. Like, we needed to feel their energy, and it's the same thing. Like, they need to help us, will us to give more, because when we're fighting like crazy physically, they can sometimes give us a little bit more inspiration. And they can just make such a big different impact on the opposing team as well. Like, when they get loud and they call timeouts on the field defensively and they start the MIZ chant, like, it is really, really tough to hear on that field. And we just need to hit them to keep that energy up.
Coach, you look at where this team was last year and then where this team is this year. Obviously, you did this with one new transfer in Maya Dodge, but a bunch of new freshmen. We talk about what these freshmen do in the dugout and what the energy they bring to the field. But just in terms of talent, what do you think makes this class that you brought in so complete that they're already part of the super regional team competing at a high level?
I'm going to quote Herb Brooks. I'm not looking for the best players. I'm looking for the right players. And that's the difference. And when you look at our stats, nothing stands out. Like, nothing's flashy other than we have 47 wins. Like, that's all that really matters, is you're winning. And it doesn't matter how you do it. And we don't need superstars, and we don't need kids that only think about themselves. We need players, and we need 10, but we have 22 that think about the team, and they put the team ahead of themselves all the time. And that's why one of our mottos is team first, because whatever is going to be best for the team to be successful, that's what they're going to do. And that's why they care so much. And when you have players that aren't on the field that are that emotional over wins and losses, they know the impact that they have regardless of what their stats are.